Hello, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you all to the first of our autumn sessions. We're hugely privileged to have Rodrigo here, and the first thing we need to do is to congratulate him. This month marks his 10-year anniversary as chief winemaker at Caliterra. He's got an interesting background. He was born in Chile, but moved to France at the age of 5, then moved back to Chile when he was in his 11. He studied first in Chile and then went back to France to Montpellier, taught there, and also had a lot of experience in major French wine regions. Then he came back to Chile again in 2006 and began the next year working at Errázuriz. And at the end of 2009, he became Errázuriz head white winemaker until August 2011, when he left. And the following month, he joined Caritera as their chief winemaker. And it's Caritera that he's going to talk to us about today. Over to you, Rodrigo.
Thank you for the introduction, Lisa. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here with you. I don't know what to say after that presentation. Talk about a little bit about my life. Yes, this is my 10th anniversary in Caliterra. I landed here in 2011 with a lot of joy, but also with a lot of mission. And one of the mission was to change a little bit the face of the wines at that time. I remember that in 2011, 2010, we still had the influence of what we like to call in the industry the Parker kind of wine, the Parkerization, if you want. And we wanted at that time to leave that style of wine and trying to show a little bit more about Kolchawa. And that has been the mission. Beside being also very concerned about the environment, so Caritera always have been under that purpose. So I've been doing this for 10 years, I think, and I feel very grateful to show the wines that we are doing now. Very happy to also with the wines that we are doing. I have a short presentation for you. I need to share it. I don't know if I can share the screen. I think so, yes. I just want to show you and talk a little bit about the brand, and then focus into the wine and of course, and tasting with you and commenting the wine with you. So first, oh, I don't know why it's not working. Oh, okay, no way. Yeah, no. Sorry, it's my mistake. Okay, now we're ready. Okay, everyone is looking to the PPT? Perfect. So, first of all, for those that don't really know about the history of Caliterra, Caliterra was born in '96 after the first joint venture in the Chilean industry between Robert Mondavi Winery and Errázuriz Winery. Well, Robert Mondavi from the US and Errázuriz from Chile. They both share the same ideal, the same vision about Chilean wine, and they created this brand with this common dream that was to craft wine that show the essence of Kolchawa and also taking care of our nature and what transform through time into the sustainable practices. Okay. One of the things that I want you to recall, all the images and pictures that you are going to see are from Caliterra. So all the beautiful landscape and animals and everything is from Caliterra. So first of all, we were and we still are the first winery to drive sustainability in Chile. I don't want to extend too much because we don't have too much time, but we were the brand that created sustainability in wine in Chile. Okay, that was in the early 2000 years when in Chile sustainability really didn't exist. We were the pioneer in that sense, as in other things too. But sustainability for us is quite relevant because we were and we still are very concerned about it, and we try to every time trying to explore new practices to enhance this compromise with nature, man, and of course the business. Okay. All the wines that we produce try to also show the terroir. As I was explaining before, we used to do a lot of kind of parkerized kind of wine, and when you do parkerized kind of wine, it's hard to tell which grape variety you're drinking. It's hard to tell which valley you are because all the wines tend to be quite even. Okay, so we try to get out of that way to do wine and trying to explore more into terroir, explore our micro terroir. Kolchawa, of course, that is a quite renowned valley in Chile, and where we are, and trying to show the purity of the grapes and the purity of the terroir. Okay, so for those that are not familiarized with Kolchawa, of course, Chile is the long and narrow country, the spaghetti country, as the Chinese call us, in the southwest part of South America, and we are just in the middle of Chile. Okay, we are 200 kilometers southern from Santiago, that is our capital, and the Kolchawa Valley. It's a long valley that goes from the Andes mountain to the sea. Caritera is 60 kilometers away from the Pacific Ocean. Believe me that it's still a long distance from the ocean, but we still have, of course, the influence of the Pacific Ocean. Okay. This picture just want to show a little bit the neighborhood. I try to say that in Kolchawa, we are in a place that I always call the virtual triangle, the triangle of virtuosity in wine in Chile, because we are surrounded by a good neighborhood. Okay, you have La Apostol, Montes, Zapalta Valley. I don't know if you can see it here in the bottom. You have Viña is a quite renowned brand. Just in the other side of the mountains that we are, this is Caritera. So as you can see, we are in the same chain of mountain. We have a lot of things in common in terms of the soils. Okay, also of course in the climate. We do have some differences in microterroirs, microclimate, and microterroir that we try to show it in the wines. Okay. Okay, just shortly to explain a little bit about the climate of Kolchawa and of course of Caliterra. Caliterra is if I take the Winkler, the index Winkler, that is a very renowned kind of classification of terroir in terms of climate. You have the cold classification. Of course, you have Burgundy. In Chile, you have Casablanca, you have Lleida. That's why those landscape, those places are more dedicated to white wines, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and Riesling, and other whites that prefer cold temperatures. Then you have the temperate classification. That's where Caliterra is. Some vintages, historically, sorry, this has been the classification of Caliterra. The last vintages, sometimes as we had the global warming, some of the vintage can be a little bit warmer, but we are in between the temperate classification and some vintages a warm temperate classification, and you can find Bordeaux, Maipo, and some part of also Kolchawa are located in the zone 3. And then you have the warm classification, and you have Mendoza, you have also, I don't know, Algeria, other places that are quite warm. Okay, so even if we think that Chile is warm or Mediterranean, sometimes you can be surprised about our climate. And overall, I must say that we have one maybe exclusivity in this kind of Mediterranean weather, is that we have a quite cold night. Okay, I'm sure you have heard about this from Chile, and the cold night are a consequence of all the Pacific influence. Okay, we have a quite cold water in the Pacific, and that influence all the climate in Chile. We are the only country in South America that doesn't have any tropical weather, and that's kind of it's a nice advantage to produce wine. It's not a so good advantage for tourism, for example. We don't have any tropical beach in Chile. Okay, so the wines that we're going to taste today are from different ranges of wine that we have. We are going to start with a premium range that we call Tributo. The Tributo range, from the Tributo, we are going to taste the Sauvignon Blanc. We are going to taste it's an outsider without any classification. The Distinto wine it's a semi-carbonic maceration wine. And then we are going to taste a little bit an upper range, the Edición Limitada, limited edition. We're going to taste two of the three. We have three different blends. We're going to taste the Mediterranean and the Bordelaise blend. And then we're going to taste some very special, and it's not an exclusive because we have it in different markets, but it's a very small amount of wine, very terroirist kind of wine that belongs to the upper part of Caliterra in a very specific and unique terroir. Okay, so if we talk about Caliterra, this is the vineyard. As you can see, we have almost a valley of our own. We are surrounded by mountains, so we are completely isolated. That's a good thing because as we are quite concerned about the environment, this kind of isolation allows us to be organic, sustainable, or whatever we want without any contamination of the neighbors. Okay, and we differentiate three periods of plantation. The number 3 is the first period of plantation. That's where we have the big influence of Mondavi, and maybe the flat part of Caliterra is where we take the most of the volume. Some of the Tributos come from here, and the Reserva range, of course, come from this place. Then you have the number 2. Number 2 is a foothill, looking a little bit to the northwest exposure. So it's a little bit warmer exposure, and that's where we have a bit of Cabernet Sauvignon and also Carmenere and Petit Verdot. And then you have the number 1, that is the upper part of Caliterra. It's the higher vineyards that we have, and that's where Petrio come from, for example. That's also you have some of the vineyard look to the south, so they are quite fresher than the rest. And believe me that in Chile, the exposure to the sun is quite relevant, because as we are in a latitude of 35 degrees south, the sun is more direct than what you can find in Europe in general. If you compare, Kolchawa is 35, Bordeaux is 45. So the sun is something that influences a lot, and that's what we have been doing in trying to show in the wines, how the sun impact in the terroir and how the sun impacts in grape varieties. I have already, I think, a knowledge about which grape variety loves sun, which grape variety doesn't enjoy too much sun, so you have to cover it a little bit more, but always looking to have wines that show a good and nice personality, fruitness, nice acidity, and wines that will be in general easy to understand, easy to drink overall. Okay. Well, this is a map, is a chart of all the grape varieties that we have. But as you can see, we have quite a lot of Carmenere. But something that wasn't very usual for Chile. Caliterra had planted since the beginning of the project in 1996 a lot of Malbec, and that for Chile wasn't quite usual. You know, Chile is always have been about Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon. Well, after that, Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay, and Malbec was always like. Malbec has been always in Chile. In fact, there is a little bit of history that talks about Malbec from Argentina come from Chile, but it wasn't a relevant grape variety at its own. We used to use Malbec as a blender, you know. But Caliterra since the beginning, I think overall, due to the influence of Mondavi, took this Malbec potential, believe in Malbec in Kolchawa, and planted quite a lot for what the vineyard is. Malbec is the presence of Malbec in Caritera is more than 15% of the vineyard. So it's something, of course, very relevant for us. The number one grape variety for Caritera is Carmenere. Carmenere in Kolchawa is quite successful overall in the flat part, and that's I can explain you shortly. It's because Carmenere is a grape variety that loves sun, and as I told you, sun is something really relevant in Chile, and Kolchawa Valley is one of the wider valley in Chile, so we have a little bit more of enlightenment, not more temperature, but better light. That's why we professional call Kolchawa the Valley of the Light in general. So one of the grape variety that, of course, give really nice result is Carmenere. The other variety that through time I have learned that really enjoys sun, and that's maybe the difference with Bordeaux, it's Petit Verdot. And Petit Verdot in Caliterra also give really, really nice result. That's why we have it in the top wines in general. And I would talk a little bit more further during the presentation. This is the Tributo range, the first wine that we're going to taste. So I invite you to have in your glass the Sauvignon Blanc. So the Tributo range is a range that pretend to give to the consumer a nice approach in a kind of a premium approach of the valley and of our valley and of each grape variety. So we did a selection of the terroir to produce this nice wine. The difference maybe with a Reserva kind of wine, because you know that Reserva for us is not the basic, but it's the middle. This is a little bit higher than the Reserva. It's maybe like a Grand Reserva classification. Is that in this case everything is handmade. We harvest by hand. We do a selection in the vineyard, and it's also a block selection. The bottle says single vineyard. All our wines are single vineyard. This is maybe a marketing small mistake in my opinion, because all our wines come from the same vineyard, excepting the whites that come from other vineyards that we have in Casablanca. But all the reds come from the Kolchawa vineyard, and all the whites come from our Casablanca Santo Tomas vineyard. But Caliterra Tributo normally is more like a single block kind of wine, because we selected some plots of the vineyard to produce these wines. So talking about this wine, the Sauvignon Blanc Caliterra, the Tributo, I don't know if you can see the bottle here. Yes. This is a vintage to 2020, which was a nice vintage for Chile in general. Really good wines will be the result of this vintage. It was a dry vintage, but not quite warm. So even if we had a dry vintage, the temperature overall in the coastal area where the wine is in Casablanca um, had a nice evolution in the plants. The grapes ripe very, very well, and we were able to show the potential that Casablanca has. I need to do a question for you. Do you know Casablanca? Are you familiarized with the coastal region from Chile, or should I do a small introduction about it?
No, just a short introduction, please.
Okay, so in Chile you have even if we are a very and quite narrow country, you have a lot of difference in climate in between when you are close to the ocean and when you go close to the Cordillera de los Andes. We have another chain of mountain in the middle of the valley that we call the coastal Cordillera. That it, of course, is a thinner and lower chain of mountain, but that goes from the north of Chile to almost Patagonia, and that separates what we call a small valley, a coastal valley. That's where Casablanca, Lleida, and other Aconcagua Costa, other valleys are also produce this white wine. And then you have what we call the central part of Chile, the Central Valley, that has a difference of temperature. And the reason is quite simple. The coastal valley has all the influence of the Pacific, all the cold temperature, the cooler, the cooler temperature. As you know, cold temperature goes down, warm temperature goes up. So the cooler temperatures stay in that region because of the chain of mountain that I told you, the coastal Cordillera. So it's like it's a circle of refrigeration, if you want. So we have at least 10 degrees of Celsius degree, I'm talking, 10 degrees of difference in the same time, at the same hour, in the same day, between the coastal region and the inner central part of the valley region. So if you want to do a comparison of distance, in Kolchawa, Caritera is 60 kilometers away from the ocean. The coastal part of Kolchawa will be 20 kilometers away from the ocean. Okay, so only in 40 kilometers of distance, you have 10 degrees of difference. Okay, but that's only because of this chain of mountain that I told you, the coastal Cordillera. Okay, so at the end of the 90s, well, at the middle of the 90s, beginning of the 2000, that's when we discovered, well, not discovered, but we dare to plant grapes in those valleys, because in the past we used to think that it was too cold to produce wine. So that in the middle of 90s, we dare to plant vines in that part of Chile. And that's how Casablanca Valley, Lleida Valley, San Antonio Valley, and other valleys of cool climate started to produce very nice and fresher grapes, white grapes in general, and also Pinot Noir, respecting more what the needs of each grape variety. And that's what we want to show in the wine, in this bottle. So in Casablanca, the kind of soil that we have, for example, it's a quite granitic origin with a lot of quartz. Okay, so what this kind of soil gives to the wine is a lot of brightness, a lot of liveliness, without being a chalky kind of wine, without the minerality of what you can have from limestone or chalk. You have a lot of brightness in the palate, a lot of texture, and also in general you have a lot of citrus and a lot of this kind of citrus influence of the flavors and the aromas. And that's why what we want to represent with this wine. It's a quite culinary wine, a good culinary wine. We do a little bit of fermentation in barrel in this case to give a little bit more of complexity in this wine, but just a small amount of 10%, maybe 9% barrel fermentation to give a little bit of creaminess. This is a wine. Well, what can I say? Very fresh, very citrus in general, and with this liveliness that I told you about Casablanca. Any comment or question about the Sauvignon? I have some chat.
Please unmute yourselves if you've got a comment to make. No?
I think it's delightful. Thank you very much. Works beautifully.
Tal?
Thank you.
It's lovely. I had struggle opening the small bottle, but manage.
Yeah.
One question, do you still have any Sauvignon S?
Sorry?
Do you still have any Sauvignon S?
No, not anymore. Well, we used to have a lot of Sauvignon Nas in the Central Valley, in the central part of Chile, when we used to produce the Sauvignon Blanc in the warmer places. Sauvignon Nas was, I think, predominant in the Sauvignon Blanc wines. That was like a kind of a mixture that we did, what we used to do. But nowadays in the new plantations, I'm talking new. This is not new. This vineyard has already 18 years. But when we planted Casablanca, the new coastal valleys, we planted with clones. We planted with a proper Sauvignon Blanc and not Sauvignon Nas mixture with Sauvignon Blanc as it used to be. It used to be like that. It used to be like that. We cannot forgot that. It used to be Sauvignon Blanc with Sauvignon Nas in more warm in warmer places in general.
Thank you.
Nowadays we use clones. The clones that we use here, I didn't want to get so technical, but the clones that we use in general, I really like the 242. That is a French clone that give a little bit more of elegance. Maybe it's not that expressive than the clone one from Davis from the US. That is really aromatic. I really enjoy the French clone because it gives a little bit more texture, more palate. So we do a bit of both in this wine. We in the same plot we have a mixture of both clone. We have, well, not a mixture. We have separation, but I always use a little bit more of the 242 clone than the one. One is really in the commercial, very herbaceous kind of clone.
Do you use your own yeasts or do you buy them in, please?
In the Sauvignon Blanc, well, it's a mixture. What we ferment in barrel is our own yeast, and what we ferment in tanks is commercial yeast. Where we are going to start a program to create our own yeast for white and for reds, but that will take for the reds, for example, we do native fermentation. We don't use any yeast. But I must be honest with you, we don't have any control of which grape, which yeast is doing the fermentation. And what we are going to start this vintage is a study of which yeast is fermenting our wine, because as the red are native, we want to select maybe the best native yeast that we have, okay, and then to put it in and make, after doing the selection, trying to reproduce it and use it as it was a commercial, but of our own and produced by our own.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, we should move.
Yep.
Oh, it's not moving. I don't know why. Oh, yeah. We should move to the next wine. That is the Distinto wine. Distinto, born in the 14th vintage. After a trial that we did of semi-carbonic maceration, because it's not a carbonic maceration as in Beaujolais Nouveau in big tanks. This is a small fermentation in old barrels. We took away one of the heads and we did there a trial with carbonic maceration. Okay, I'm not saying full carbonic maceration, because we don't do all the fermentation under carbonic maceration. We do only the halfway of the fermentation under this practice, and then we press the grapes and we continue fermenting in old barrels with the native yeast that we have at that moment. Okay. So this is a different wine. That's why the name is distinto. Distinto means different in Chile, in Spanish, sorry. So the idea with this wine is to have a very funny, easy to drink blend. It's a blend of Malbec, Petit Verdot, Syrah, Grenache, from Kolchawa, from Caliterra. We ferment separately. We do the maceration is every variety did by separately, and then after once that all the grapes have finished the fermentation, we blend and we bottle. We don't give any aging. So the only thing, it's not a wine that we age in the barrels, it's a wine that we do the fermentation in the barrels. And we use the older barrel that we have because we don't want any influence of the oak. It's just a small vat. Okay, it's not that we want to give aging to the wine. So this is a 2018 vintage. 18 was one of the best vintage that we had in the last, I don't know, 20, with a very nice fruity character in general to the red ones. And in this case, you have a nice representation of what this technique can do. Thinking more in the creation of a nice quality, kind of a not Beaujolais Nouveau, maybe more a good Beaujolais, a good Gamay with semi-carbonic, with grapes that are harvested quite early in our vineyard. Okay.
Where does the label illustration come from? It looks intriguing.
It was a creation. It's a creation of a designer that worked with us, and she created this. I don't know if the illustration is kind of a mixture of ancient kind of industry, because the carbonic maceration is something that has appeared, but it's a quite ancient technique. It's like when Roquefort had all the fungus, all the aspergillus that give the green kind of flavors, or well, the green fungus is an accident. Carbonic maceration is kind of an accident too. It's when you leave your grapes without any crushing, and the fermentation starts to happen inside the berry. So that's why normally the carbonic maceration one are a little bit more fruity with nice color in general because of that, you know. And it's kind of an accident that always happen. The thing is that in this case we try to provoke the carbonic maceration, and the wine normally it's as I told you, very vivid, very alive, with a nice color, very nice aromatics in general, quite fresh as wine. And when we were trying to do new techniques to give something different to the wine, we found out that this wine could be something different, and we put it in the bottle instead of blending with the other wines. No.
Rodrigo, I see from the text sheet on your website, this is only 50% malolactic, which of course is very unusual for red wine. Are you deliberately blocking the malo?
It's not that I block the malo, it's that I bottle before the malo finish. The thing is that I'm not looking for malolactic here, mainly because of two reasons. When you don't give aging to the wine, I think malolactic can be a little bit too much flavory of malolactic. I don't like it. So I try to avoid that the malolactic goes quick in the wine. In fact, after the fermentation, I leave the wine in a cool place with the barrels until I blend. And once that I blend, I bottle immediately. This wine is bottled the same year of the vintage. So when you're talking about the 18, this wine was bottled in mainly, I think it was in August or September 18. Okay, I'm not waiting for anything in this wine, and I want also to have a little bit of malic acid. Malic is quite fresh, it's quite textural as an acid, and I wanted to stay a little bit in the bottle.
Yeah. Really vibrant, but I assume you have to sterile filter.
Sorry?
I assume you have to sterile filter.
Not sterilized. No, it's not sterile. No? What I give before the bottle is a cold shot, and then we bottle, and the filtration is similar of what I do with the higher level of wine. We say that is a filtration to avoid the flies.
Okay.
But we
Really
give a cold temperature shot before the bottle.
Thank you.
And of course, we control. To be honest, we have a strong control of microorganisms in the wine. So if I find out that the wine is full of bacteria or even bread, sometimes you can have also contamination. I block it, and I don't bottle. But in this case, it was okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
We move to the next wine.
Yes.
So the next two wines come from the Edición Limitada. Edición Limitada is an old range that we work in Caritera. I think the first Edición Limitada was from the 2006 vintage, but we have done some modification, okay, since 2010, because as you know, in the new world, which Chile is a part of, we can do whatever we want as blend. We can blend Sauvignon Blanc with Chardonnay, Viognier with Chardonnay. That is quite common in our region. You can blend Syrah with Cabernet Sauvignon. You can blend, even you can see sometimes Pinot Noir with Merlot. That's quite strange blend. But we don't have any restriction in terms of which grape variety you can blend with the other. In this range, in this line, the Edición Limitada, we wanted to pay a little bit of like an homage, or maybe to respect the origin of the grapes. Okay, so we created these three blends. One is the B, the Bordelaise, that we use only Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and in some vintage, not very oftenly, but sometimes we can use also Merlot. You have the Mediterranean, the M, that it's a blend of Syrah, Grenache, Carignan, and sometimes we use a little bit of white, maybe Viognier, depending on the vintage, Viognier, Roussanne, or Marsanne. And you have the other one that we're not going to taste today, that is the A from Andes. That is kind of funny. A can be used as Andes or Antique. Why Andes? Because it's Carmenere with Malbec, so it's Chile and Argentina together. And Antique because this was some grape varieties that used to be in Bordeaux, quite well overall Malbec. Before the phylloxera, it used to be in Bordeaux, and nowadays you cannot see it too much in Bordeaux. So it may be before phylloxera, you have these two grape varieties that they share this bottle. Okay, so we are going to taste the Mediterranean first, and then we are going to taste the Bordelais. Okay, the B. Okay, so the Mediterranean is from the 16 vintage. 16 vintage for us was a cool vintage in general, and it was also a rainy vintage. So the wines used to be quite fresh, quite fruity, a little bit lighter than other vintages, with a very nice acidity in general, typical of a cold vintage. And we had a long period of ripening of the grapes. In the 16, we use it's a blend of Syrah, Carignan, Grenache, and Marsanne. Okay, both either the Mediterranean as the Bordeaux are aged in barrel for 18 months. French oak, I don't use American. That's one of the changes that I did when I landed in Caritera. It's not that I don't like American oak, but I think it was too strong influence overall in the nose, in the aromatic side of the barrel, that I wanted to avoid a little bit. In the case of the Mediterranean, it has less new oak than Bordeaux. Bordeaux is, every vintage can be in between 40 to 30% of first use barrel. In the case of Mediterranean, is more in the 15 to 20% of first use barrel. Okay. In general, we have two different style of wine, of course, as the grape variety represent. But the representation of the Mediterranean that I want to give, it's a more in the lineal side of these grape varieties. Long finish, lineality, good acidity, overall influenced by the Carignan acidity that is quite high normally in Chile, and nice florally, and what in France they call the garrigue. I wanted to also participate in this wine. I love this spiciness that you can find normally in this wine. So the next one is this. I don't know if you can see it well. Oh, I don't know why
I'm just unmuting myself because Catherine wrote in the chat, and I don't know whether everybody's seeing the chat. And I think that we're tasting wine 5 next,
Right.
and then wine 6, and then going on to 3 and 4.
Ah, you have it in the other. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Can you tell me
sorry, I've just, don't worry, Rodrigo, it's absolutely fine. It's up to you. But yeah, sorry, I've just seen that. Thank you, Ink. We're going to do 5 and 6 and then come back to 3 and 4.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, your call,
that.
Rodrigo. You're the winemaker. You made them. We'll taste them in the order you suggest.
Yeah. So yes, we're now tasting the number 5 then. Number 5. Yes.
Yes, that's right. Number 5 originally was Edition Limitada M, and
Yes.
number 6 originally was Edition Limitada B. So we're doing your Edition Limitada pair first.
Perfect. So I don't know if I explain again about this one, or you get it, even if it was you were maybe drinking the other one. But the idea is to have a blend that represents a Mediterranean, fresh Mediterranean with a nice acidity, nice vibrance, fruitness, but overall a spiciness in the wine.
I'm sure people will be able to go back to it and try it as well, Rodrigo, so don't worry.
I've got a question, Rodrigo,
Mhm.
which sort of applies to the M, I imagine is going to apply to the next 3 red wines as well. And that is, how are you managing to keep the alcohol levels in check? So they're all written down as 13.5%, except for the Bordeaux, which is 14. I know that these days we're getting some really, really, really high alcohol levels, and with long hang time and all the rest. So what are you doing to control the levels?
That's one of the myth. It's not a myth. It's a reality that normally in Chile you can have a high alcohol. The thing is that in Chile we have a quite long summer. Okay, so if you want to push maturity of the grape, you can have high alcohol, as you mentioned. You can have 14.5, even 15 if you want, because the summer is quite long. So it's only a thing to harvest the grape later, and you will have a higher alcohol. But the thing is that we work into the vineyard to push the grapes to have an early maturation. Okay, I normally start to harvest in February. That is something quite different from what we used to do, and even nowadays I think we are maybe one of the earlier harvester or picker of the grape in Kolchawa. But we work the vineyard to have an early maturity, a good expression of the grape, but without having high alcohol, and also helping us to have good natural acidity. That is something that is related with the alcohol idea. If you push further the maturation, you will have high alcohol and lower acidity. All the wines that you're tasting have a natural acidity. We don't apply any tartaric acid. We work for several years to reach this point. You know that you can. We are confident that almost all the vintages we are in between 30 and 30.5 degree in all the red wines. So, well, maybe the B in 17, that was a very unique year. We had a little bit higher alcohol, but normally we are playing between 30 and 30.5. The Malbec Petrio, I think one of the 16, I think maybe 17, I don't remember, was 12.5. It's not that I have how can I say? It's not that I have an obsession with the alcoholic degree. Is that I have an obsession with freshness, and I have also, we work the team in the vineyard, and we work to have this possibility to harvest the grape without green flavors with low alcohol. That's what we did and what we're doing since at least 5 or 6 years already.
Rodrigo, thank you. I love that freshness. And I know it's not just the good acidity, of course. In fact, the pHs are amazingly low. I see on the end here that the pH is 3.2, you know, which is fantastic.
It's also white pH.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful.
Yeah. What I was in the DM, the pH is overall influenced by the Carignan. The Carignan, this is the only wine that have a grape that is not from Caritera. Okay, that's why the appellation is Chile, it's not Kolchawa, the DO. because I took a grape that I buy from a very unique farmer in the south, in the Cauquenes, in Maule Valley, with vines that have more than 100 years, without any irrigation or whatever. They are managed in what we call the head. So this wine in general is way more approachable, approach more in this kind of a fresh Mediterranean. The Syrah, it's work in Caritera under the Gobelet management, and that also give a little bit more freshness to the wine, because the grapes are always protected from the sun. And the Grenache that we have in Caritera, it's also work not in Gobelet because we don't attach, but it's a free head management too. So it's completely different to what you can have in regular tradition, in vertical tradition, with the Bordeaux influence that in Chile is quite strong. As you know, Chile has been influenced by Bordeaux since we created the new kind of industry. The wine in Chile is quite old. Chile produced wine since the Spanish arrived, so we have a long tradition of wine producing. But what the industry that you know nowadays has been influenced by Bordeaux since the end of, or mid 19th century to end of 19th century, and then of course everything has a move toward this production. So this wine is different in that sense also. It's Mediterranean in a lot of sense, not only of the grapes, but also because of the management of the grapes in general. In the case of the Syrah, for example, we do a management that I learned in Rome. Pierre Gonon, you know Gonon, I'm sure. Saint Joseph. Pierre Gonon teach me attaching both two vines together, creating like a small, I don't know, we call it the bridge, that help to also to enhance the shadow between plant to plant, to helping the grapes to be even more protected from the sun. So that's how you can reach this kind of acidity too. Okay. So moving further toward, we are going to taste the B. This is a different kind of approach, more in the Bordeaux, more in the traditional Bordeaux. But the difference maybe with the traditional Bordeaux is that the composition of this wine is more in the presence of Petit Verdot and Cabernet Franc is quite relevant in this blend. It's not a Cabernet Sauvignon dominant blend. Okay, Cabernet Franc for us, the quality of Cabernet Franc in the hillside, in the top hillside, and the Petit Verdot are very, very relevant for us. Okay, as I told you before, I think Petit Verdot in Chile works very good, and Petit Verdot in Kolchawa works really, really good. I used to, in my period in France when I worked with Petit Verdot, it was how can I say it without saying any bad word? It was a hard grape variety for us, because it took very long to ripe, and I must say that in some parts of France, the Petit Verdot, they harvest before the rain. That's it. That's the parameter that they have with Petit Verdot. It takes them a lot of work to ripe the grapes, and I think it's very similar of what you can have from Carmenere. Also, it's not in this blend, but it's for me the same. It's the same comparison. I think one of the reasons why Bordeaux haven't yet gain back or take the Carmenere back to Bordeaux, I think it's that they will have problem to ripe it. And my explanation to that is that both grape variety, they ripe very well in Chile, not because we are warmer, because we aren't warmer than Bordeaux. In Bordeaux, you can reach 40 degrees on some vintages. You can have easily 35 degrees. In Kolchawa, you have some days with 35, but normally you are more during the summer, you are more in the 32, 28. So we are not warmer, but we are sunnier. Okay, we have a better alignment that you can have in Bordeaux in general. Okay, the latitude influence, we don't have any clouds, and the valley is wider, so you have a lot of influence of the sun, and that's why Petit Verdot ripes so well in Carmenere, also in our valley. In fact, Carmenere, a secret of Carmenere to produce good Carmenere is to put it with light but without too much sun. Carmenere it's hard to explain, but Carmenere really enjoy light, but doesn't really enjoy the sun. The warm. Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, enjoys the warm temperature, but doesn't enjoy the light. So we have to play with all those compromises for each grape variety to produce a good wine. Okay. So in this case, you have a more fruity red fruit, a little bit of a sweetness in the nose, more a typical Bordeaux approach in this case, with a nice a little bit of floral of the Cabernet Franc in the palate. I think in general it's a rounder wine than the Mediterranean. It's also a bigger wine in terms of the structure, but it's a Bordeaux kind of approach of what you can have in Kolchawa. Okay. Do you have any question, comments before we go to the Petrios?
You can just give us the grape varieties breakdown. Sorry, you cannot see it. The percentage.
Yes, I think that's what he's asking. Yeah.
Okay. The percentage, I will have to check it. Sorry, I can tell you. I can tell you after. I don't have in my mind now. I will have to check in my laptop.
I can tell you, Rodrigo. I've got,
yes?
for Edition Limitado B17, I've got 54 Cabernet, 29 Petit Verdot, and 17 Cabernet Franc.
Okay.
That sound about right.
If that's the information that we send you, that's the technical sheet that we have.
Right.
So that's the information. What I can tell about the 17 is that this is maybe one of the vintage that we use more Cabernet Sauvignon in this blend, because Cabernet Sauvignon in that vintage went quite well in general in terms of quality. So remember, 17 was a warm vintage, and as I told you, Cabernet Sauvignon enjoy warm temperature, not too much light. When you give too much light to Cabernet Sauvignon, you have less color, you have a little bit of a burn kind of aromas, but the Cabernet Sauvignon enjoy warm temperature. In fact, Cabernet Sauvignon in some of our plots we protect from the sun. We use a little bit of a shadow kind of a net.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Welcome. Okay, so we will move to Petrio. So Petrio is a small adventure of two wines that we have produced. They come from the upper part of Caritera, what you can see here, and they come from also from the fresher part of Caritera, because of two reasons. One is because the vineyard is looking to the south, so in Chile, when you look to the south, it's the other way. It's the opposite of what you have in Europe. When you look to the south, it's fresher because you don't have the sun of the afternoon directly in the vineyard. You have only the morning sun, which is fresher in general. And the other thing is that as in this part of the vineyard, as you can see, we are surrounded by mountain. We have less hours of sun. Okay, the sun is how can I say, is hidden before 1 hour before that you can have it here in the flat part, because the sunset is through here. So this mountain protects the vineyard, and during the summer, when the sunset normally occurs between 8:30, in this part at 7:30, you have already shadow. All this part of the vineyard is already under the shadow, so you have less sun, and you have only the morning, directly only the morning sun. So first difference with the rest of our wines, that in this part you have even fresher wine. The other difference is the soil. In this part you have a lot of stone, and the stones that you have here are a kind of are colluvial schist, but also granite. And one of the things that makes it unique is that the schist that you have are full of minerals. You have a lot of basalt. You have a lot of iron in the stones. You have a lot of also of quartz in the stones. So, and you can find even some chalky, some limestone stones in that part of the vineyard. Is quite unique, but you can find it only there. And overall in the Malbec area. Coming back. So the Malbec is here. Is in the, you can see my
Yes.
Yes. So the Malbec is here, and the Carmenere is only those. Sorry, the Carmenere is here. The 2 blocks from here. So what you can find here, it's a little bit more chalky that you can find in the Carmenere. The Carmenere has a little bit less of the influence of the chalk. It's very unique, and that's why we decided to separate from the rest and present it as a range of its own, the Petrio, and you will find only Malbec and Carmenere in this range, and it's very unique. The other thing that I do with the wines is that I don't work it well. The Malbec, I work it I age the wine for 18 months, but in amphoras, clay amphoras, okay? Trying to preserve the typicity of the place of the grapes and without any influence of the oak. Even if I use all oaks, I prefer to have this amphora that come from Spain that have a very tight grain, so the microoxygenation is even lower than what you can have in the barrel, and you have zero influence of the wood. Okay. In the case of the Carmenere, I do a little bit of more with the barrel, because Carmenere is a grape variety that need a little bit more oxygenation, microoxygenation than maybe the Malbec that come from that part that is very, very delicate. It's all, for me, working with this Malbec is almost like working with a Pinot Noir. It's quite delicate. Okay.
Which wine are you tasting first, Rodrigo?
First, the Malbec. Malbec. Because of the typicity and also because of the vintage. You have 2 different vintages here. The Malbec is 16 and the Carmenere it's 18. Okay. You have 2 good vintages. Both are what we consider cold vintages. 16 was cooler than 18. And you have a good representation of what you can have in both vintages of this part of Kolchawa. Caritera. with Malbec have done nice work since the beginning. When I arrived to Caritera in 2011, I asked the question, I will not say the bad word that I said at that time, but I will say the nice word that I said was, why do I have to do Malbec? You have Argentina right next to us, and they have great Malbecs. At that time, well, great Malbecs, quite ripe Malbecs. Then I start to do my own wines in Caritera, and I understood why Malbec was so relevant for us. The quality of Malbec is quite unique in Caritera in general. For me, it's the #1 grape variety in Caritera. I think it's one of the #1 grape variety in Kolchawa. The thing is, because of all the influence of Bordeaux in Chile, Kolchawa was planted with a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon and a lot of Merlot. But I think the potential of Malbec in Kolchawa is huge. And nowadays, a lot of other wineries are working with Malbec in the blends and also doing Malbec wines. But Caritera was one of the first to have Malbec in as a single bottle, if you want, as a varietal bottle. And Caritera was also one of the first to change the style of Malbec, because we used to produce, as the Argentinian, quite ripe, high alcohol, very sweet kind of Malbec. And we moved to this new style of fresh and nice acidity, vibrancy, and more in the floral kind of Malbec. I don't know if you have any question or comment about the Malbec.
Anybody has a question, please put it on the talk or ask to be unmuted. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next wine. Or no, nothing's come through. Okay.
So let's move with Carmenere. So, well, Carmenere is a very relevant grape variety for Chile, but also for Kolchawa. Some of the most recognized Carmenere from Chile come from Kolchawa. Caliterra used to be quite recognized by the Carmenere, the traditional Carmenere, I must say. What we have in the flat part is with a very deep and dark kind of soil that give a little bit of a Carmenere with a lot of sweetness, I must say, in the aromas and also in the flavors. And then we discovered that we had this Carmenere in the hillside, right next to the Malbec, with a very stony kind of soil, completely different of what we used to think was the correct terroir for Carmenere. And we started to look at it, to pay more attention to the typicity. We understood that the grapes work differently of what the vines work differently, and the grapes ripe differently of what you can have in the flat part. And in 2000, at the same time that we start to work with Malbec Petri, we start to work with the Carmenere, but it took us a little bit longer to understand it. And I don't know if you know it, but Carmenere is a relative grape variety with Cabernet Franc. They have a lot in common, a lot in common. And when you taste a Cabernet Franc from Loire, you can find some of the same kind of feeling that you can have with the Carmenere. Sometimes at least with this kind of Carmenere, you have a lot of spiciness, nice vibrancy. Of course, you can have a little bit of peppery notes, but I like these peppery notes when you have a lot of fruit among it. So I think it's a new approach of Carmenere, fresher approach of Carmenere. We are completely sold out about this wine. Catherine, they just tell me that we receive an order of Carmenere Petru, and we are running with the wine for you.
Thank you.
Again, it's a wine it's a different kind of wine, and it's full of life. And I like this kind of Carmenere. Personally, I was a little bit tired of the typical Carmenere because it's a good wine, but it tends to be a little bit tiring. I like wine when they have nice acidity, purity, fruit, and you can drink it alone or match with food. That's the kind of wine that I like, and I think in this Carmenere you can reach that sensation. It's not a perfect wine, but it's a nice and singular, and with its personality of its own. That's what I enjoy about this wine. Okay, so that's it in my presentation.
That was delicious. I love that Carmenere. It's just full of, as you said, zippiness, but also an elegance, and so unlike Carmenere of old. Definitely. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Lovely bell pepper fruit.
Yeah, but you know that it's normally what we have. We are afraid from the variety. I think when you, how can I say it? When you stop being afraid and learn that you will have other things beside these peppery notes, you enjoy it. I really enjoy this wine.
It's for sure that Chilean wineries now know much better where to plant Carmenere, because in the past they used to, well, almost pull it up with the Merlot, and it wasn't the same thing at all in taste profile when you do that, because it's just too early for Carmenere. It needs to reach the optimal ripeness, doesn't it, without peaking and getting too ripe, but at the same time retain that character which Keith referred to, the bell pepper character, without that bell pepper being offensive. So it's a careful balance, difficult one to get right, but in a warmer area like Kolchawa, you'd expect to be more successful perhaps than in some of the other cooler areas, which in a cool vintage might, you know, not produce such good Carmenere. But Carmenere is a fascinating, great variety. I love it personally. Thank you.
Great. And another thing that I can add to that is that we are still learning. We are young producing Carmenere, and this is the grape that you didn't have any knowledge from anybody else. The French never talk about Carmenere, even if that's where it came from. But you don't have any information about the grape variety. And one of the changes that we needed to do with Carmenere first was the pruning. When we used to prune as a Merlot, the pruning is something that is really, really relevant in Carmenere. You cannot, you have to prune it as a Guyot, not with the pitons. What the name? So first, the pruning is different. The other thing is the yield. You cannot push further the yield in a Carmenere if you want to have quality. It's different with what you can have with Merlot. Merlot can produce a bit further, a bit more, and then of course you have small variation, and one of them is the soils that we used to believe, as you told us. But I think we are changing. We are learning. It's not an easy grape variety. We used to plant Carmenere everywhere, and you cannot plant Carmenere everywhere. It's not. I don't know. It's like a Pinot Noir. I think in terms of it's a terroir revealing grape variety. It's not a Syrah that you can plant it everywhere. You will have acceptable to good wine. Carmenere, you can have disastering wine, the really bad wines, and you can have some very specific and nice terroir that can produce this nice and with this good approach. And I think what we do is a compromise between having nice florally fruital and nice acidity with of course the peppery notes that you will always have that. That's why I do the comparison with Cabernet Franc. If you want to have a good Cabernet Franc, you have to accept the typicity of the Cabernet Franc. Otherwise, you will have a masked kind of wine, very dark, very good for blend, but not too much personality. And that's what happened with Carmenere. And we used to do a quite ripe, sweet, and for me, in my opinion, almost a dull wine with zero acidity, which after some time drinking it, I think you get a little bit tired. And that's what we are trying to change.
You mentioned the fact the French don't often speak about Carmenere, but to be true, they didn't often speak about Malbec either until they realized that Malbec was a very successful commercial product from the Southern Hemisphere. And then they got on that bandwagon, didn't they? And they do create a different Malbec, that's for sure. But Cahors has woken up, and some other areas around there have woken up, I think, to the potential of Malbec. And there's even Malbec in the Loire now, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's true. Malbec, Bordeaux was full of Malbec in the past. It was full of Malbec. They call it the vin noir. It was the wine for the kings.
Yes.
But they Cahors, if you know Cahors is a very small place. As you have a lot of different small places in the southwest of France that nobody knows about it, or well, very few people knows about it.
Yes.
Cahors was like Madiran, like Jurançon. You have very small parts of great producer of wine that nobody really talks about it. And they had to wait of Argentina. In fact, the Malbec in France, the name is, well, it's not the name, but they used to call it Côte. And then when Malbec in Argentina was really famous, you can see nowadays bottles of Cahors wine with the Malbec really big in the label.
Yes.
So yeah, you have that. But I think in Cahors, I visit Cahors. I love Cahors, but what I was ashamed last time that I thought I saw a strong influence of the typical Argentinian wines with a bit more of a ripeness in the Malbecs, but you still have really nice producer of Malbec in Argentina too, and in Cahors that still produce this nice floral with nice tension, linear. Malbec, it's all about the soil. So in Cahors you have the sidérolitique, you have the limestone. So it's a very nice grape variety. And in Argentina they're doing a great job. Also, Sucar, some of the good producer are doing a great job also with Malbec, fresher, lower alcohol, florally, not those really strong, sweet, hard to drink wines.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Fantastic presentation. I've got to leave now, but that's really interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Hope to catch up
Bye-bye.
with you again soon. Maybe at the Chilean wine tasting if there is one in London.
Yeah, sure. And I hope to travel to the UK soon. I miss it.
Yeah, well, we miss you too. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more questions from anybody before I wrap up? Silence is heard. Okay. All right, I'm Keith Granger on the Circle Committee. I've got the easiest task of the day. I'd like to thank so much. Firstly, just thanks to the team from Hatch for putting this together, to Catherine and to Deborah. Thanks to my Circle of Wine Writer colleagues, to Liz and to Andrea for the organisation. But of course, special thanks to you, Rodrigo, for such an excellent presentation and absolutely brilliant tasting. I'd like to say straight away, I'm so glad to see freshness in the wines and restrained alcohols. I like to drink wine. I don't want to have a little sip and then go on to the next one. So it is really great to see someone admit that they're not afraid to pick a little bit earlier. And as you said, you don't want any greenness, but I'm sure you wouldn't worry too much if there was just a dash there sometimes, just to keep those wines in great balance. So that higher acidity and low pH is really fantastic. Thank you for answering all the questions with such agility and also so comprehensively. Really great. And I love your little anecdotes and comments. The French, you know, always picking the Petit Verdot before the rain, what I always call an insurance picking, but that's the way of the world in France sometimes. So a really brilliant presentation. I've learned so much. Thank you once again.
You're welcome. Welcome, everybody.